Ryan, listen, I do have to admit that during our pre-stream interviews with you, I was a little starstruck, but not because you're from Synack Red Team by any stretch of the imagination. We couldn't figure out what movie star you were likely separated from at birth. And so after some discussion with our team, our moderators, kind of pegged you as a Ryan Reynolds. And so, we have to ask, were you separated at birth from Ryan Reynolds? I mean, if you look at, this picture and a little bit of the Ryan Reynolds, I could see you got a little Deadpool going on here.
All I can say on the record is that I've never been to Canada.
And we did something just a tad different with this stream than we normally do. We actually, for the first time, and I think this worked out really well, I posted up an Instagram story where I asked viewers to kind of preload some of their questions, and we picked a few from our community to ask you before we ever really get into this thing. And so I want to kind of pop up a couple of those really quick and give you a chance to answer those questions from our community. And so the first question that we have here is from IG user Red Devilio 10, who asked, what makes Synack Red Team different and unique from other red teams out there? Thanks. Would you mind answering this one for us?
Sure. So I'm going to assume here when the question is about other red teams, other, crowdsourced red teams, I'm going to take
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
So I think the biggest thing that separates us is in terms of the vetting and the process by which we do to try to ensure that researchers are successful. What we do is we actually have a very stringent policy up front to make sure that we are getting the qualified researchers, not just people who look good on paper, but also people who are actually have tactical hands-on keyboard experience. In addition to that upfront vetting, we try to make sure that when we grow the community, we're growing at a proportional rate to make sure that we have enough opportunity that's going across to all the different researchers. So again, we're very cognizant of tracking whether or not, when researchers come on board, is there a likelihood that they are going to come on, see new targets, have first at-bats, get fresh meat, if you will, as well as making sure that we can match them up with opportunities, try to make them and give them repeated success. I think that's the level of investment that Synack has put into growing and cultivating that community is one of the reasons why I actually came to Synack, and is probably, I would say, is definitely the most differentiating aspect of that red team.
Now I want to kind of jump off of this a little bit. Okay. On this stream frequently, I have talked about Synack Red Team being a good opportunity to, get started in this concept of bug bounty programs. But I get the sense from you when you use crowdsourced pen testing or crowdsourced security quite a lot. Am I mislabeling Synack by calling Synack a bug crowd program?
I definitely. Again, for us, we see bug bounty as being part of the bug bounty as being part of crowdsourced security, but it's not encompassing. For many of our clients, bug bounty is actually just the tip of the spear. It's a way for them to kind of get an idea of what the stance of their security posture is. The way that we interact with, the way our red team interacts with our customers, whether it's bug bounty, patch verification, ad hoc security work, or even like checklist type, work or compliancy, for example. Those are some things that, we make sure that the experience with the customer is basically full service. And so it's not just a bug bounty program. So from that perspective, the researchers that make it onto the Synack Red Team, where we focus on and driving the community is about making sure that we have repeated success, opportunities for everybody. But more importantly, that opportunity isn't always an adrenaline high bug bounty, fast and furious thing. A lot of the times it's about trying to create opportunities where researchers can kind of find their nuance and their fit, and if you will, and then kind of grow from there.
So let's get way more tactical than that, because we've got a wide range of folks who watch this stream. Give me some practical examples. What is a bug bounty, and how's that different than what the Synack Red Team does from like a red team exercise perspective, like at the tactical level?
So at the tactical level, like bug bounty is your traditional, as a cohort of researchers are added to a listing. They're giving a scope and basically said, hey, the first to report wins. In typical fashion, it's the people who can find the vulns fastest, have the best skill, the best automation, they tend to win out. On the Synack Red Team side, we actually have a concept that is acceptance period, which is the very beginning of every listing, which is where we focus not on just speed, but also on quality. So the end goal is that all the results that we get from our researchers are vetted in that acceptance period. And that is used to basically give the client the best value possible. So that's an example of where kind of like the Synack triage process gets in there and kind of affects the bug bounty aspects of it, making sure that, yes, speed is important, but we care exceptionally about quality. If you go past the bug bounty to, like, let's say the next wave or the next time that listing comes up and is introduced to the crowd, there may be a lot of times there's a retest in which bug bounty does come back again. But in most cases where we have researchers that found something, if the customer client deemed that it was a valid find and that it should be patched, those patch verifications route back to the original researcher, giving them an additional income stream. They're the ones who found it. They're the ones who should be able to verify if it gets patched or not. And they also get a bonus if they can subvert the patch if it was done. So again, we try to make sure that there's a continual involvement of those researchers into those opportunities, creating those additional income streams. The compliancy stuff, we have a product called Missions, which can be anything from such as a standard checklist, like, anyone who wants to go through and make sure that, you're good on the OWASP top 10 or maybe, just any other compliancy element. We can take those missions and we can break them out and send them out to the researchers, and the researchers can claim them, pick them up, and kind of get a way of guaranteed work in the sense that you claim it, you say, hey, I'm going to do this in the next 4 to 24 hours. There's a guaranteed minimum payment that's going to be done with it. And there's no rush in terms of having to know whether you're going to compete to be the first to submit, if you will. Like, you're kind of locking in that predictable work so that you can knock it in. So, whether it's PVs, our missions, or, the checklist type stuff, or the ways in which we, make sure that researchers are keep coming back to the customer, I think that's the difference, if you will, because we're looking for that extended customer researcher relationship, because we want our researchers to have that relationship with as many of our customers as possible.
So I'm gonna break it down even further, right? Just in if we're thinking about it, bug bounties is just an aspect. It's probably the most tactical level of what happens in these crowdsourced pen testing type roles.
Yep.
Versus when you look at the whole Synack Red team, bug bounty is an aspect of it, but they may be doing other parts of security conversations with that company to help them focus on the holistic view of their security, not just the web app or the mobile app or whatever it is that they're testing.
Correct. Yeah, I would say the bug bounty is the most effective tool, again, in the general crowdsource arena, to kind of get a broad spectrum analysis of what's going on. Like a bunch of people, looking into an asset, looking into a listing, and trying to see what is susceptible, what's available to break. And having that broad spectrum view is the best way you're going to get that immediate, view.
Do you think we overuse the term bug bounty when we talk about crowdsourcing pen testing?
I do think that we're at a precipice, or a precipice where I think it's interesting to start separating them out. I think bug bounty is a very strong tactic, right? It's very effective when done correctly, but it's not a holistic view of everything that is going to be needed from the crowdsourced security spectrum, or for the future, to solve the problem that crowdsourced security is trying to solve, which is closing that technology or that experience gap, the cybersecurity talent gap, if you will. So again, like, bug bounty by itself is not going to do it. But again, I think that if you look at crowdsourced security, such as tapping into the collective knowledge, the hive mind, if you will, of all security knowledge in the world, whether it's, incremental small knowledge or, master experts of everything, being able to tap into those and distribute that information and that knowledge and weaponize it to as many customers as possible, affecting as many platforms and technologies as possible. That's the future, the problem that, I think that everyone in this industry is trying to solve. Bug bounty is a very effective tool of it, but it's not the only thing that's going to drive us to success there.
So since you mentioned the future vision of kind of this industry, before I get to the next IG question that we had, okay, if you could change one thing about either bug bounties or crowdsourced pen testing or crowdsourced security right now about your industry, what would be that one thing that you would change?
I think, to me, is I think the element is about trying to find ways to improve the synapses that exist between all the layers in the puzzle, right? You're going to have the customers, the platforms, and then the researchers, right? And I think everyone has their own expression of what it means for those to interact. But I think that there's I think there's an interesting problem that we have right now where, there are, depending on what part of the spectrum a company is on, they could be, leading in their company, meaning they're aware of their security posture. They know what they need to do. They have every one of their processes figured out and working, versus the people on the other end who are just, oh my gosh, I know I've got to do this, but how in the world do I, do that? And the fact that the researchers are caught in the middle, trying to homogenize that experience. There's people with senior information security professionals running their programs. There's people with, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do my best that I can. And the researchers get caught in the middle of that inconsistency. So for me, I think it would be some level of providing that level of assurance to customers that, hey, when you, so that when researchers engage with these platforms, that there's that homogeneity, if you will. Because right now, I think that it's up to the platforms, to the middle of the platforms, to create that homogeneity. But a lot of the times, there's so many things hinging on that, reward structures come to mind specifically, right? If I don't know how to reward or incentivize researchers to come to my target, if I'm competing against a target that's has reward structures down, how do I figure out a way to draw people in? Right now, it's basically a race to whoever has the biggest dollar.
Yeah.
And I think that there's needs to be, a better way to kind of create that matching. And that's where I think I'm, optimistic that Synack will be a strong player there.
Okay. Let's move over to kind of the second IG question that that we had going on here. This one is from G Caldera, who asked, is Synack beneficial for someone who aspires to be blue team, or is it only for red? Wow, I messed that one up a little bit there.
It's all right. I guess in my opinion, it depends on how blue you want to be. In my opinion, the skills that you learn on the red side are applicable on the blue side just as much. It's just, again, the tools that you use to make them, and how you deal with it. I think the thing that's really interesting when you look at crowdsourced security, it's not just about skill. It's about skill, quality, and speed, right? It's a combination of all three of those. And when you're in that environment, how much does that apply from the blue side, right? You're going to have some elements of quality and speed there, but I don't know if it's 100% of alignment. So I would say for anyone who is interested in just being in cybersecurity, having a very strong understanding of what a red team is capable of and what does it mean to be a part of is probably going to be a good set of skills to cultivate for your blue side experience. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive, but I would say that the red team side, definitely when you become successful on the Synack red team, you definitely are putting a lot of emphasis on quality, speed, and talent from the red side. And so again, for you to become successful and then pivot blue feels maybe odd. It definitely would be okay in my mind to find something that you are good at, or a very specific discipline that you feel like you could be a blue and a red side advocate and participate on the red capacity in that, and kind of earn your red side spurs, if you will, with that discipline, and then apply what you've learned back from the blue side in more of a global manner. So again, not mutually exclusive, but it definitely needs to be methodical.
I think one of the things that I'm a huge advocate of, that I talk about a lot, right, is I think we've moved past an idea that red and blue are mutually exclusive of each other. There's a lot of value that a blue teamer can have by understanding a lot of the stuff that the red team does, the tactics that they use, the techniques that they use, and I think vice versa. And this is, we see this with the introduction of this concept of purple teaming and things like this. But we were doing this years ago, where it's like, hey, let's do a pen test, but let's sit down with the red team and show them how we do a pen test, so that we can all watch the blinky lights go off on the sim, or maybe not at all, depending on the case. So I've always attested that knowledge share that exists between those lines have really faded over the years.
Yeah. And I would also argue that I would just support that, in that a lot of some of the more successful red team people out there, the people who have the most success early on in their red team careers, come from a very strong blue side. They basically know the traps that are set up. They know the shortcuts. They know what people are too lazy to set up or too lazy to do. And that's their first thing that they try out. And that's where they strike gold. So from my perspective, I think that, again, it's hard to say which way you're going to go. Again, if you're starting out net new, it's definitely the world's your oyster. But I would say that, from a blue side, going red is definitely going to be advantageous, especially if you understand the aspects of and with the technology that you're working on.
So since we're on this topic, and I know that there's probably gonna be a lot of questions about this in chat, so I'm gonna kind of circumvent some of these questions just to ask you directly. What about when we look at some of the other roles in a cybersecurity organization? What about going from GRC to red team, or IT audit to red team, or folks who are coming in from even maybe some of the non-traditional backgrounds? What do you see that path look like? And is it as perilous as maybe it was a few years ago?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think what makes this answer kind of hard to kind of dive into, or rather not dive into, but what makes it more difficult to actually succinctly answer with like a yes or a no or anything like that, is the fact that the onboarding and training materials are so just prevalent in the industry right now. And so you can pretty much choose your path. I think the biggest aspect is going to be whether or not you're coming. Personally, I don't really think that it matters what you do for a job. I think it matters more where is your passion. Like, for example, if you're going to take on the efforts of learning red teaming and, again, compete against some of the best researchers in the world and work in a crowdsourced capacity, you're going to have passion, because if you don't, you're going to burn out. But like, for example, if you're like a back-end programmer, like an IT, there are different ways that you can kind of spin up your red team emphasis. Start with things like SQLi or more programmatic, vulnerability categories, so that you can, how things are written. And so you can kind of use that knowledge to kind of ground your knowledge. If you're a front-end person, you can get into functional business logic and applications. Like, I mean, this is one that I thought was really just odd. When I actually transitioned to Synac, I had to take a small tangent for a second. Back when I was an IT architect, that was something that I got access to WebGoat. I learned about the OWASP top 10, and I kind of knew when I was architecting my applications that I had to keep, sanitize your inputs. That was like basically back in, was it 2011, that was basically if you sanitized your inputs, you were pretty much good at that point.
Yeah, that was the answer to everything. Sanitize your inputs.
Basically. But again, like, there was a concept of OWASP top 10 back then. And when and I took, my career took me in different paths where I, pulled a little bit away from development, went more of, professional mouthpiece, if you will, talking about technologies and whatnot. And then as I came full circle back to this, I was the first thing I did when I joined Synac, or right before I joined, I was like, oh, let's go see what the OWASP top 10 is and see. And I'm okay, it's only changed by 2 in 10 years. And so when I started doing CTFs and I started playing around with all the tech, I'm sitting there going, I had these high expectations of like, okay, 10 years ago, people were doing this. There's no way people are still doing this now. Like, but you go into CTF and you're seeing there's hard-coded credentials inside the actual application and client side. And I'm like, what is going on? So for me, like, I think that there is, to pull that back, like I said, there's never, regardless of where your technology experience is from, as long as you're passionate, go dig into it. I think there's tons of ways to pull in, to get into the red teaming side. But again, like, I don't think you have to go all in on the red team to fully understand it. I think you just have to be curious and pick at it. And I think that that's going to get you a lion's share of the way. And then from there, determine, do you want to actually pivot your career, pivot your interest and passion to red team? That's a decision that's a little bit harder.
Yeah. I think I want to pull on a thread, because you mentioned the 10 years difference between OWASP and seeing that it had only changed twice. I had a similar experience when I got out of the Air Force in 2013 to the civilian world, where we were used to exploiting 08067, all these old Windows-based vulnerabilities in the Air Force, and I was like, man, when I get out, all this stuff's going to be gone, because nobody on the outside ever has any end of life Windows systems out there at all. And I get to my first Fortune 100 financial services company, and they're riddled with 2003 at XP, and their XP boxes are all using domain admin credentials for their local admin. And I remember that same feeling, like, wow, the world is way different in reality than what it is when we get taught it in printed material.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really interesting. And again, I think that speaks to the urgency of what makes cybersecurity such a demanding industry, and why it should compel everyone to kind of read up and find a niche and go after it. Because the world is moving way faster than anyone can keep up with.
Yeah.
And again, and this is, and that's the piece. It's been prevalent for the last 10 years. It's only going to get worse. So for me, like opportunity is abound.
Yeah. Now, when you'd said it at the beginning and you kind of glossed over it, but I want to kind of dive a little deeper into it because you also highlighted it in our interview, and I think it's important for everybody to hear, right? Can you please explain to everyone what your definition of a hacker is, why you're a lifelong hacker, and why you think that you're a hacker now versus where you were then, and just kind of that definition of a hacker?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, I have since I was the age of, the age of 11, where I kind of didn't know that was what I wanted to call myself. When I saw the Mentor's, Hacker Manifesto when I was 14, I knew just by reading it, I was like, that's me. That is to the core, describes me. I had such affinity with reading that post. I mean, it's really funny. I printed it out and put it on my wall in my room, and my dad saw the word manifesto and freaked out.
He thought you were going to be a terrorist, didn't he?
Exactly. And so I'm sitting there going like, no, read it, first. And I was just, but it was like that moment where I was just like, you know what, it's really, there is a world of people out there who did not understand. And I grew up in small town Texas. So that world was small. And even in that small world, the number of people who just were oblivious to a computer and what it could do and the powers it had, it was very alienating. So for me to find that affinity or that connection to a community, or that there's this person that wrote this really interesting thing out there, was really interesting. And then to see it like quoted in the movie Hackers, of course, I was like, oh, okay, well, at least I had like a 6 month jump on it at least. But, but there was this, but that to me is what originally kind of imbued me into the hacker culture. But for me, what it means is a person that really just doesn't accept what's giving to them. Right. For me, like if you look at something, it's about calling bullshit. It's about saying, no, this is not the best way to do this. There are better ways. I can be better for myself. I can be better for the world, for my company, my organization, my friends, whatever, group you care about. It's about coming together and solving problems. And again, like to me, ever since, I got onto my first IRC channel back in the day, like that is the hacker community that I think of. When I get goosebumps talking about the hackers I get to work with, they're just really exceptional people, right? I see them building each other up. Yeah, every now and then they throw the fun bombs at each other, but for the most part, like they're out there understanding that paying it forward is a very big thing with them, and that's the part of the community that I think I like to focus on when it comes to hackers. So when I call myself a hacker, when I look at people, it's like people who question everything, people who look for like people with similar problems, or people who have the desire to better themselves, or the desire to dig in, right, and being a part of that community and contribute. I think that's probably the biggest piece of it. But more importantly, across everything is the meritocracy that exists. Being a person that, as a kid growing up and, going in 19 and walking into rooms as a consultant, telling people that were a lot older than me that, hey, you need to fix your code. This is not good. It was very odd because there was always a look of, you're just a kid. How are what's going on? And I remember feeling like I was in the lion's den. I was going to get eaten alive. And it took 6 months to realize that, hey, I'm not the one with the problem, and I think that's the part where, as a hacker, it's really, I don't care if you're 5 years old, 6 years old, whatever. If you can do it, if you have the talent, that's what matters. And I think that's the thing that, that's what I consider to be a hacker. Like you take all the media buzz, all the, the stigma that's been labeled onto it over the last, 2 decades, whatever, like those things don't matter to me. Like to me, like when you put the word hacker, I would wear it on my shirt with pride, because that's what that means.
But I think the thing that I want the audience to take away from this, what I want the community to hear, right, is it's in you, right? It's your desire, your passion. It's what you think about yourself. It has nothing to do with how many CVEs you have, whether you've got your OSCP, whether you're a $1 million bug bounty hacker. It's inside of you, and you get the privilege of calling yourself that or not.
Yeah, and I think I do agree. I think that you can look at, people as saying, well, is it hacker with a big H or capital H or lowercase h? It doesn't matter, right? Like,
is it
for
at the
me,
beginning
like,
of the
if
sentence
people
or the
are
middle of the sentence?
exactly, but I think what it matters is in the fact of understanding, what is it you want to do with that? Like, people who just would say, I'm a hacker, yay. Okay, great. What are you doing that's helping you do that? I don't think it needs to be like, it needs to have proof in it per se, but you do need to have an earnest effort to try to do something with that moniker. I think by calling yourself that, you're saying, well, okay, then how are you using your skills to make a difference? How are you using your skills to help others? In my opinion, the cybersecurity divide that we have right now and the talent, the lack of talent that we have is not going to be solved by any, linear number of growth that we're going to be able to create. Like any one, the number of bachelor's degrees in cybersecurity is not going to solve it. It's going to be everyone picking up a piece of the mantle and saying, look, you know what, I'm not a professional, but I know this much about hacking, and I'm going to share and disseminate this information, make sure that my circle of influence around me is aware of this. And the more people that we can make aware of this, more developers, DevOps, QA people, the number of businesses that can understand cybersecurity as a true and imminent threat. If they haven't identified it yet, then that's a bigger issue. But there is the number of opportunities that you can take to even, claim the lowercase hacker, if you will, and move the agenda of cybersecurity, safe technology for the future of the world. So to me, that's a piece there. I don't think that you should feel ashamed I don't think you should feel ashamed if you are doing things to help the world in this cybersecurity, dilemma. And just because you don't have CVEs or you don't have all these, or you don't have a big profile with a bunch of fines on it like that. Again, you should strive to try to get there because there's a lot of great opportunity, but I don't think that you have to wait. Again, but you need to have, in my opinion, just do the job.
Yeah. So I want to carry that theme over because we had a stream on Saturday, and I want to kind of set the scene for you a little bit. We highlighted the profile of a very interesting young man by the name of Dustin Decker. He's a truck driver. He's trying to make a career change. Yeah, I was gonna say you probably see. Yeah, I was gonna say he's got 14,000 likes on this post on LinkedIn. He's trying to make a career change out of that business of truck driving into cybersecurity. He posted a picture of himself in his rig doing some Try Hack Me labs. One of the things that I harp on the community for is this definition of experience, right? And I frequently talk about using crowdsourcing platforms as a way to get that experience in pen testing. Not to knock other platforms like HackerOne or BugCrowd, but they do allow the hobbyists to just kind of sign up on their platform and start pen testing almost immediately. In our pre-interview, when you and I talked, you talked a little bit about that weekend warrior concept when it came to making that transition into full penetration testing. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit and kind of talk into that?
Sure. I mean, so where I was talking about there, we were talking about the concept of what does it mean to make that transition. And again, I do recall that Dustin's post. I think I actually commented on it as well. Again, those are the stories that I live for. People who, I think probably the first ways I got to take a small tangent.
Yeah.
I remember when Uber first came out, and I had never used it before, but my company was in Palo Alto, and I had to fly out there, and they said, hey, make sure to do an Uber from the airport. And I was like, all right, installed the app, did it. And the first time I talked to the person, the guy was like, hey, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Actually, Uber X was the first time I did this, but the idea was, I was talking to the guy, and I was like, hey, so, how long have you been doing this? Oh, I've been doing this for 3 months. And I was like, oh yeah, what you're doing? And his whole purpose of doing it was to, not necessarily to drive cars, but he was trying to do a transition in his career, and he needed income and flexibility so that he could make that transition. And I think that was a story. Every time I got into a rideshare after that, I always made that my question. So as part of my conversation, hey, what do you do? What are you trying to do? What's the thing? And it's a really interesting to see all those from to shifts. And when it comes to cybersecurity on the red team side, I think that in the crowdsource side, I think what's incumbent is that there's definitely a way to kind of mimic that trajectory. But I think that there's a couple of things that you want to take note. So one, it's very important that while cybersecurity, there is a lot of learning on the job. You definitely don't want to learn on the job everything when you're on a customer's target. In the case where there are things that you can do that can mess things up. And so for me, I always put, it's very, very important. The number one thing is to own your traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that imposes a certain level of precursor to jumping in and doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really important as you get going is that once you've gotten that confidence, like whether you've found that one thing that you're really good at and that you want to build on, what's really nice in cybersecurity is that you can actually pivot to other elements of the attack chain. So like you can go to other disciplines and learn other ones based on the knowledge you already know. And so when you're going through your red team experience, to me, there's a moment where there's the finding your first vuln, right? That's like the most amazing thing, right? It's I did this on myself. I did this by myself. I was able to make it work. The part of that that's really interesting, this is something that I want to give credit to Stoke on, because I really, really enjoy listening to him speak about hacker mental health, is about making sure that you don't mistake initial joy for that first vuln with, I can do this full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, and I think that there's a vast canyon that exists between doing red teaming or crowdsourced red teaming full time and finding your first vuln. But it doesn't mean that you can't take extra steps along the way. One of the things that I really look at when I look at my red team or the Synac's red team is the different profiles, if you will, or personas of the people that we work with, right? We have some researchers that are wildly successful, and they tune in, somewhere like 8 hours a week. They come in, they get their work, they get their targets, they do their stuff. They come in and they get exactly what they need out of it, right? They use it as a way to, I've learned this skill with CTFs, or I've tried this one or on this. I'm going to go and try this on a real target now that I know what's going on. And again, and they're finding some good success that way. We have part-time people who, in my mind, are really, really is a really good fit, right? A part-time person is basically we call somewhere that's around 20 hours a week of commitment. And again, commitment is not something you're obligated to, but it's about 20 hours of what they do, I guess you could say, in a week. Mm-hmm. And what that means is they normally have a full-time job. They may have families, they may have kids, they may have other responsibilities and interests, but they love cybersecurity, and they tune in for 20 hours a week, working on targets, picking up some extra money. And that is the transition point, I think, that is most important for everyone to understand, is when you get to a point where you're spending, about 20 hours a week, and you're making regular income, and you can kind of see that line holding steady or steadily increasing, that's when you can start looking at those decisions of like, okay, that Uber moment. Okay, can I maybe start do I like this? Am I having fun doing it? Mm-hmm. Do I want to continue investing in it? Or can I pull at that point, should I or can I start pulling back from what I normally do and start investing incremental more time? And then that's where we get the full-time researchers who, again, have been fortunate enough to, break away from, a 9-to-5 job. They work from wherever they want. They work their own hours, and they are full-time on, bug bounty. And I think that's like the dream for me, like what I shoot for with my community, or with the community programs we try to put in place, is to enable that safe transition, provide that predictability. And I think that, when you are on your journey, making sure to realize that don't go too soon. Like it's going to be a marathon, unless you're just exceptionally gifted. If you're asking these questions up front, like I said, that should give you pause. It's like, okay, if you're having to ask that question, it's worthwhile taking that extra time to make sure that you got everything right. The last thing that anyone wants in any of this stuff is for someone to have undue stress. Mm-hmm. When you talk about living on a red team, you're constantly in a position to, be the fastest, to provide the best quality work, unsure whether or not your work will always get accepted or not, having to deal with the adrenaline, the dopamine that happens mm-hmm. with, getting an accept, getting a failure, getting a reject, whatever. Those things are real, and they can take a toll on you. So it's really important to go into it with a method, if you will. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would say that's the biggest part is, as we talk about those different segments, is just try to figure out, and again, you may have a different one altogether, but try to find that persona, if you will, and make sure that you're progressing through those correctly. And I think that if you do that, you'll reduce your stress. And again, that's one of the reasons why we try to make sure that we have responsible and growth on our community, because we want to cultivate people along that journey from fresh into red teaming to the people who are talented, put them on our platform, cultivate them to weekend warriors, to part-timers, and if we can, and we're fortunate enough, move them over to full-time. To me, that's where, success in spades happens, because we're able to make an impact change on someone's life.
So that's a great perspective. And when we talk about this, like, it wouldn't be the cyber insecurity stream if we didn't, really get into this real conversations with real people part of it. And so I'm going to put you into what we proverbially call our hot seat.
Okay.
There are some pretty,
standing, just so you know.
Well, then maybe some hot shoes then if you're standing.
We'll go with it. So
there are some pretty clearly documented issues when it comes to crowdsourcing your security, particularly pen testing. Some of those that are documented are things like, internal versus external. These types of models, aren't suited for testing internal, company perimeter. There's certain benefits when it comes to, the resource allocation, right? Everybody's fighting for cybersecurity resources, right? Synac is eventually going to run out of resources, just like the rest of us are, even if you're trying to suck up all the other ones. But I think the one that I want to harp on is the one it kind of talks about this Uber model that you're referring to. And it's this concept of a gig economy. And when we get back to your Uber driver comment, right, an Uber driver who drives for 10 hours, he or she can typically calculate a certain amount of take-home pay. Now, security researchers who are engaged in crowdsourced pen testing are not paid for their work. They're paid per vulnerability. And in some cases, they don't end up getting paid. And in some cases, they submit a vulnerability and it's a duplicate vulnerability, and they may only get a fraction of that pay. And essentially meaning that finding no vulnerability means you don't get paid even with the amount of work that you may put into it. So how do you think this gig economy, affects that barrier to entry for somebody who's looking to use that as that Uber model, to make that transition?
Well, and that's one of the things I try to talk about Synac creating multiple revenue streams for researchers. So, yes, that's to me that is the flaw of bug bounty, if you will, is that it is so extreme, right?
Does your employer allow you to say that there's a flaw with bug bounty?
I might be I'm saying in terms of, so maybe you'll catch me. I'll try to clarify maybe, is that from a researcher's perspective, thank you for the hot seat moment. From the researcher's perspective, it's an all or nothing, right? I either get accepted or I don't. There's not a lot of middle ground there. And so again, how can you predictably say, I'm always going to be the fastest, I'm always going to have the best quality, and I'm always going to be the most talented at any given opportunity on any target? It's a very, very hard thing to predict. And so one of the things from Synac's perspective is we try to find other opportunities that are more guaranteed. So our missions is a great example. So the ability for us to put missions out there that allow you to, when you get access to a mission, you claim it, it's 50, 25, $100, something like that, to go do some security work. And that mission price is based off an hourly rate. So again, if the thing we're asking you to do is a lot, is very time consuming, the mission price will be higher. If it's not very time consuming, it'll be lower. And so for me, that is the big element that helps with that learning curve. Being able to push out missions. And again, we're constantly looking at ways to push more of these predictable ways of creating that safety net. One of the things about the way that we run the community is that, and a lot of it is based on trust. Mm-hmm. Like the longer you're with us, the better you perform over time, the better that we can trust that you're going to do a good job. We find unique opportunities for you. We'll do skills matching for you to come onto special targets. If a customer's looking for a special type of analysis, right, we'll go and say, hey, this person is trusted. They have a proven skill in doing this. We're going to do that. And those are the things that as you invest into a platform, those opportunities should become easier for you as you find success. For us, missions are a way for us to not only cultivate success at the top, but also create that early stage weekend warrior people opportunity, right? People who can chime in and say, look, I'm going to do 4 or 5 missions a weekend, pick up an extra couple $100 a week. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. To me, that's the first level of success. It's the appetite of, I've seen researchers often saying, it's kind of funny. It's like, I don't remember who I'm quoting, so I guess I can say this, but they're like, I can be in here for 8 hours on the weekend because I can show that I got paid money versus being 8 hours in the weekend and not getting paid anything. And explaining that to my significant other is a lot easier, and I think it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but it's true, right? Yeah. It's rewarding to know that I spent 8 hours and at least I got something for it. So this is one of those reasons why I feel like it's not just a single tactic. It's going to be multiple layers inside what makes crowdsourced security work. it needs to be predictable. It needs to be reliable. And again, there needs to be a two-way street when it comes to trust. The researchers need to be able to trust the platform, that they're doing the right thing by them, being fair and honest. And the other way, we need to be able to, the platform needs to be able to trust the researchers that when we ask you to do work, that it's going to be of high quality, that you're, going to provide the best quality work for the customer. When the customer's happy, the platform's happy, the researcher's happy. That should be the virtuous circle that keeps everything flowing.
And so a lot of that really just kind of comes down, and I think maybe this gets back to some of the things we talked about at the beginning, right? The next evolution of crowdsourced security or crowdsourced pen testing, where, it needs to start emulating more of that Uber model in terms of providing that reliable sort of income and whatnot for the researchers, so that, it's not, and again, not a knock on HackerOne, not a knock on BugCrowd, because I still stand by, I think for the hobbyists, that's a good place to jump in and get started. But, there can be a little bit of a challenge to sit there to your significant other and say, well, I sit here for 8 hours and I didn't get a single vulnerability, versus something like the Synack platform, which is trying to hedge that gap just a little bit more.
And I think what's also part of that is also about, in terms of building the trust, we talked about the trust from the customer to the researcher, but in terms of the trust from the, from the platform to the researcher, but the trust from the customer to the platform. I think one of the biggest things, and again, it's been a point of friction in some cases about having, Synac has had a launch point for quite some time. It's a VPN that is used to guarantee that all traffic that is sent from a researcher to a customer is trackable. So again, from our perspective, being able to build up that trust with the customer is important, because the more a customer can trust that the researchers are being held accountable, that if something goes wrong, that we can prove that, oh, that wasn't us, or that was us, or here's the problem, and we can take actions to fix it. That creates a level of accountability, and that accountability creates more opportunities. When scope increases, assets under management increase, researchers get more at bats. Therefore, again, the money just flows downhill, and as a result of that, there's more opportunity for the entire community. So, I do think that you can't look at the researchers by themselves and fix this problem, or fix this. Or create this solution of what it's going to take to solve the world's security problem or cybersecurity problem. It's going to take a full customer, platform, researcher solution, if you will, where trust is the thing that connects, is the fabric that connects everything.
So let's go back over to the researcher for a second, because I think it's awesome to talk about trust between the client and the platform, and the researcher and the platform. But when we talk about the researcher, let's talk about motivation, right? How do you, if you're trying to get into this, crowdsourcing model, and obviously you're going to fail a lot at those beginning vulns that you're looking to find, how do you dig deep to find that motivation? Like, what is it that you should keep going? And is that Synac's responsibility to help the researcher stay motivated, or kind of where does that line kind of blur?
So I have a community way to answer this question, and I think that it is the platform's responsibility to set clear goals and expectations of what does it mean to be successful on the platform. And I think it's the researcher's responsibility to bring the skill and the talent and the wherewithal. I think that, and I think that's kind of where the responsibility sits. That being said, for example, we find that building a community of researchers is you need to have a way of collaborating. You need to have a way for them to share their thoughts, communicate. If you have hackers working in silos, you're not benefiting from the hacker culture. And so you need to find a way to communicate. And so for us, one of the reasons why we've been able to keep our researcher pool, so proportional to our opportunity is because, researchers are able to collaborate and communicate with each other. And, we see it on a daily basis where someone is like, has 3/4 of a vuln. They're like, man, I'm almost there. I just can't get past this WAF, or I can't get this. Anyone got any suggestions, right? And they'll throw, and you'll see, 3 or 4 options that come in, within a couple of minutes. They're like, oh yeah, have you tried this encoding scheme? This,
right.
Sequence? And to me, that's the epitome of the hacker culture. And that's the thing that we try to tap into. So again, they have to bring the questions, they have to bring the desire to want to better themselves. They have to bring determination, but it's from a platform perspective. I think the biggest part is we have to set expectations. Like, we can't set unrealistic expectations from the get-go. If someone is coming in with no red team experience, we can't be like, okay, you've got to find a vuln in your first, 2 days or you're out, right? Like, We need to have an onboarding plan. We need to have nurturing that says, hey, this is where you are. These are the ways. This is what a successful person looks like. Here's some roadmaps. Here's some opportunities. Here's some people to connect to. Give that supporting structure and let them run with it. If they don't run with it, that's a different problem. But if we, I'm a firm believer in a hacker community that if you give people the instruction manual, the RTS, like it's like, this is how you are successful, and they don't read it, it is 100% on them.
Yeah.
And we need to be better at trying to make sure that, to me, from my background, I'm always a big fan of contextual relevance. Like, no one wants to read, a million pages of documentation. So if you have a known problem or a known opportunity that you can improve on, finding contextual ways to say, hey, did you know this happened? Okay, well, maybe this is something right here. Go look at this section of this document, or look at this tutorial or this video. Help them be better at the point that would have maybe made a difference at that point in time. So I'm a big fan of that type of education, because, again, no one wants to read all the manuals, but you have to sometimes. So
let's go back over to the researcher part, because we frequently hear about hackers on other platforms that are quote unquote $1 million hackers because of vulnerabilities, either severity or quantity, that they've discovered. Now, in my deepest sarcastic voice, Ryan, I take it because I've never heard of $1 million hackers on the Synac platform that you all don't have that same scenario.
I'm a big fan of, basically, I guess one of the things I would say with that is that most of the successful hackers in the world don't want to talk about what they success. I mean, the easiest way to be a target is to be the loudest in the room. So there are a lot of people, like I said, Synac definitely has $1 million hackers. And I would say that from $1 million mark is definitely a milestone. I celebrate anyone who's been able to achieve that, and that is something that you can't take it away from. From my perspective, it doesn't speak fully to the caliber of what we need as an industry. We need $1 million hackers out there, and they're the goal to strive towards. We need it to be more than 10 or 20 or 30. It needs to be a couple of hundred would be ideal. But where this industry is going, we need a lot of the middle class. Like, we need a lot of people to earn a living and do this full time. We need to elevate more people into that space. So yes, you won't hear us talk much about the $1 million stuff, mainly because a lot of the times the researchers just don't want to be known. Like, they're okay, completely fine living in the shadows and having time with their families and doing whatever. But,
out of the limelight, not even talking about
out of the limelight. And to me, like, those are some of the best hackers that I like working with, because, again, they understand that it's all about talent. It's like they don't find a need to brag. They're usually the ones that lift other people up and help each other out. And again, like those, when someone has that talented and is that capable, it speaks volume about the character. I'm not saying anything bad about $1 million hackers by any means. But it's, to me, like, that is something that I feel very fortunate when I joined Synac. The community is chocked full of researchers who really do care about this industry and have a passion for it, and are about building each other up. And so from my perspective, I couldn't be prouder to be here. I feel like I'm kind of just, circling on that one.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Let me pull on the thread a little bit more, though, because I think, it's fun to talk about, like, we know that they exist. And I know that was kind of a softball question, but I know when people hear those stories, right, it's just like on Instagram, watching people with cloud and watching people drive Lambos, and they want to know, what does it take to be that hacker, to be that $1 million hacker? And so when you look at those researchers, when you look at those $1 million hackers, what is that profile? What is that road like? Was that the 1% that popped 5 years ago when crowdsourced pen testing, first reared its head? Like, what's the likelihood of that now? Like, let's talk about the reality of that $1 million hacker scenario.
I think the reality is actually still much alive. So again, I definitely don't think it's a dream that anyone should give up on. I think the one thing you can say about every one of the $1 million hackers that are publicly known today, every one of them has hustle to their core. None of them are slackers in the terms of just sitting around waiting for things to come. They go after the opportunities. They're actively seeking work. They're actively bettering themselves. They're putting themselves into the light. they're using the limelight, if you will, or the spotlight is probably the better way to put it, to their advantage, to get more access, to get more opportunities. And so, again, I have nothing but respect for them. But that is a level of discipline that comes from many years of doing this, from whether you've started this 10, 15, 20 years ago, started learning about computers, freaking or whatever like floated your boat, and taking that and bring it into where this became a legitimate industry. That to me is like where you're seeing the first evolution, these $1 million hackers that are making themselves known. That's is the genesis. But again, like I feel like given the breadth of cybersecurity opportunities that are out there, the gap that needs to be filled, the amount of work that is available to everyone, again, I don't think that this is a foregone conclusion that there will be many more coming. So
okay.
But it definitely is going to take hustle. It's not going to be given to you anytime soon.
It wasn't an overnight thing. They didn't pop once. I mean, they hustled at it to get there.
Yes. And again, I've talked to many of them. I say many of them. I've talked to 3 of them in person, and the prototype that I get from them, again, they all had deep early technology happenings, like things in their life where they started with technology really early. They understood it. They happened to be at the forefront of some sort of digital revolution, whether it was in their towns or the opportunities that they had growing up. And again, I can't say college is necessarily something that you see on those resumes. And I guess because rather than going to college or getting a degree necessarily, they were doing it, and finding ways to get paid doing it. And so that's, again, it takes a lot of hustle, a lot of determination. But the thing that's really awesome about it is that with all the information that's out there, like there's no reason that anyone could not start out, on their journey. Like they could make $1 million journey anytime. It may take them a while to get there, but at the end of the day, it is possible. So
awesome. Let's move over to another topic, and this is one that I know is incredibly passionate to you. And this will be the last topic that I talk about before we do the giveaway and we open it up to questions from the community. We have had, and this is again real talk, right? We've had a couple of issues in this industry, that I'd like to highlight and talk about with you, and it really centers around toxicity. Or perceived toxicity that we have in our industry, and in particular how that toxicity affects all of us. And I think mental health is something that's a huge kind of focus for you. And I have in my social media posts, I've been very straightforward about it. We've seen conferences like DerbyCon get canceled here in the last couple of years. We've heard about horror stories from a lot of the DEF CON antics that have happened. We have people who can't even get into certain Discords or IRC channels and ask for help without being digitally stoned, out of there by these antics of try harder, regardless of the efforts that they've put into actually trying. We hear and see horror stories on Twitter about InfoSec drama and toxicity, and it just seems to be never ending sometimes. And so for you, I want to ask you, what are some of the mental health challenges that we face in this industry? How do we improve hacker mental health, and how do we tack onto that diversity and inclusion on top of it?
So, I mean, again, this is something I do think is very, very much a topic that needs to be, delved into. Long story short, toxic behavior just needs to stop. But I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, let's just hit the stop button, because there's a lot of elements to it. I think one of the ways the analogy I would look at it, right? I'll go back to how I grew up, small town Texas, before internet. If anything I learned on the computer was based on things that either worked or broke, and how I was working on things. And I was like, okay, well, I just won't do that again. And that is how I learned until I got connected to a BBS in which I could start doing IRC or multi-BBS chat. And from that point, I was able to kind of like, oh my gosh, I can actually talk to someone who's doing this in real life as opposed to reading a book or whatnot. And I think what was really interesting at that time is that everyone was kind of coming online at the same time. Like, and so it was okay to understand, like, wow, this person may be asking this question because they literally have never seen a website before, or they've literally never seen this thing discussed because there wasn't a book about it or no one's written an article about it. Right. And to me, that's that hacker culture that I look back on. It was still snarky. Snark is not toxic. Let's just make that clear right now. I think snark, is an ever-present theme in the hacker community.
Sarcasm, however we want to call it.
Yeah, you know, it's like I think that the hacker culture would be very boring without it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, though, back then, like there wasn't this expectation that you had to like, you know, read all this because you may not have had access to it. You know, if we fast forward to today, I mean, I think we are seeing a shift in that culture because of how much information and how much access, how many, you know, services, tutorials, videos that are out there that can help you get started. Now, it's almost the door has swung the 180 degrees the opposite way, which is like, where do I get started is the better question. And so, and for me, I think specifically with this last year, you know, you know, it's really hard to dive into the toxicity without having a little bit of empathy to a certain degree.
That's something you talked a lot about before. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's like, you don't know what people have been going through. And that's the people that are throwing the bombs or people who are asking for help, right? There could be a whole lot of backstory going on back there. And for me, like the last year, I've had to really, it's been very difficult from my perspective to dive into that empathy on a 24/7 basis to make sure that I check my initial reactions to make sure like, hey, let me at least give the benefit of the doubt that this person has done this or that, you know? So, but again, like when it comes to the toxicity stuff, it's important because I don't want to come off as being defending the people who are throwing the bombs, but I want to say that you know, in only 2 years since I've come back into this space, I have received my fair share of, I want to get into red teaming. How do I do that? Messages. And I'm like, I would say that while the hacker culture is all about lifting people up, I would say also, actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to grab some water.
Go for it. Yeah. See, that Nalgene bottle's coming in handy. I told you to stick it over there, isn't it?
It is. I've departed the 12 ouncer and I'm going to the 32. So,
That's right.
But I would say, like, while hacker culture is about lifting people up, I would say slackers were never welcome in the hacker culture. Mm-hmm. In the sense that you have to know that, you know, like you have to do something to be a part of that. And that's kind of the part about, you know, whether you call your hacker big H, little h. But with all the tutorials and everything that's out there, if you come into a room and ask a general question that doesn't demonstrate that you've done any work or whatever, then you should expect that you're going to get a thick dose of snark or a thick dose of potential toxic behavior, because what you're asking for, what you're basically saying is, I have not done anything, or what is being perceived as, I have not done anything. And as a result of that, you're going to get chastised, where I think that can be changed a little bit, because like from a hacker perspective, you know, it doesn't matter about your gender, your skin color, religion, whatever. If you're able to put in the work, talent is talent. And wow, my throat is
that's good. We can right now. We can give you a break on this one a little bit. We can run the giveaway if you need a water break on this one.
Let me try to finish it, because I think it's something I feel like it's good. I mean, I think the long story I'm trying to make it, or the short story of the long version I was going to say, is that you can't come in and just nerf it.
Yeah.
And I think, so for me, I have 2 tips. Like one thought is that if you're going to come in, if you're a noob or whatever you want, you know, whatever label you want to call yourself, if you're coming into a room and you're asking a bunch of people who have a proven skill that you're wanting to ask for help, when you ask a basic question, ask yourself, have I done everything that I can to prepare myself for their responses? Have I done research? And if I have, share some of those thoughts. Like, hey, these are the things that I've tried so far, and maybe list the top 3 things that you've done and explain why those 3 were not helpful for you. That at least sets a tone of, hey, I'm not trying to ask for a handout. I just need a direction. And I think that is a very important thing, is like, if you provide that context, it's much easier for people to have empathy and much easier to understand where people are coming from. And on the similar side, on the opposite side, if you see someone coming in and asking a very open, you know, blatant question that doesn't show a lot of forethought, or it looks like they haven't had, you know, looked into the matter and they're just looking for a free handout, you know, it's really easy. Don't say anything. It takes 0 effort to say nothing, and you'll be completely fine. And again, like in my opinion, the world needs the hacker culture to build everyone up, not tear us down. And so for me, like, that's where I'm like, the solution that's going to be solve this toxicity or whatever it is really needs to come from both sides. You know, the people need to calm down and, you know, try to, you know, understand that, yes, people are coming at this Some are brand new, some are coming from different industries. How can we, better onboard and on-ramp those questions? But at the same point, the people asking the questions, they need to kind of understand a little bit about the culture that they're coming into, because again, if they come off or perceived as like looking for a free handout, or like, hey, I want to learn how to make $100,000 a year doing bug bounty or whatever like that, they're going to get, they're going to get mocked, or they're going to get whatever. And we need to find a lesser response to that. There needs to be responsibility on both sides, in my opinion.
And I think that that's kind of the key there, right? Is that it's responsible on both sides. Like, we want to chastise, so we're so quick to chastise the new people. See, I'm going to talk and let you drink some water and get that throat a little bit wet for you over there. We're so quick to chastise the new people come in, and I can remember I've done two different offsec search, right? I did pen testing with Backtrack and pen testing with Cali, and it didn't matter how much prep work you did when you went into that IRC. If you asked any question, the answer was try harder. It didn't matter what level of work that you had done, the answer was always try harder. And I think that that's the mentality that has bled over into this toxicity in our industry. And I think what you harp on is that we need more empathy as well on the people who are being asked, because we're experienced in this industry. We either need to have empathy, and we need to take that empathy with us when we answer whatever those questions are, or if we feel the need to knee-jerk be toxic, we just keep our effing mouth shut and we just don't say anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy that I always look at is, in the 90s, the minute someone found out that you knew a thing about computers, you were their go-to person. And, and it's like at one point when you are answering, it's one thing to answer one person's conversation or one question or whatever, but when that's the 1,000th question you've had to answer about how to set up, TCP/IP settings or whatever, or if someone finds out you did tech support for an ISP, I'm like, oh, could you fix my computer?
Right.
You need to understand that there's a world in which you only see a fraction of, and have the empathy. It's like, yes, they have skills. Ideally, right, they're sharing those skills and making the world around them a better place. And you should find a way to meet them midway, like find a way to close the gap, put in the work, show that you're, and I hate using this, but it's a lack of better terms, worthy of that attention and focus. Because at the end of the day, if you can, pull on that thread a little bit and get that focus, and someone does say, oh yeah, I did a write-up, here you go, boom, you have just exponentially increased your path to knowledge, and it's worth your time to figure out a way to meet them in the middle. Yeah. And so again, like it is eerily, now that I think about it, very much like tech support in the 90s. Like there's a lot of people who didn't know anything about computers, very few people who did. And when they found out that you knew, it was just shoot me now. It was not fun.
All right. So with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and pause here, and we're actually going to do the giveaway. I know that this is what everybody who's like super excited for. This is what they tuned in for. They don't really care about anything else, Ryan. They don't really care about us listening. They just really care about the giveaway. Right. So we're going to go ahead and start the raffle in chat. Everybody who's hearing my voice now, if you can hear me, you are eligible for this. You should see the Streamlabs pop in there with the command that you put into to join in on the raffle. Synac has an amazing sponsorship with Hack the Box. Oh. And should I not use amazing?
Well, I'm just saying. I just see that the chat is just like,
I told you not to pay attention to the chat. Listen, this is what happens whenever we do giveaways. You only have to hit the exclamation point raffle once. I promise you, the Streamlabs bot does indeed see it. So Synac has an amazing sponsorship with Hack the Box, and they've both been gracious enough to give us five 1-year VIP vouchers to the Hack the Box platform. But wait, there's more. There's something else that was added that I didn't know existed until I talked to you, Ryan. And this is the Dante Pro Lab. And so I can't explain it as well as you do. So can you explain to everybody what these 5 people are going to get with the Dante Pro Lab as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, I've been using Hack the Box for a couple of years now. Really excited. Love working with them. One of the things that we are always on the lookout is trying to find ways to identify talent. And so what we did with Hack the Box specifically was we have 2 ways on their platform to find talent. One of them is with there's a Synac Red Team track. If you join Hack the Box, if you can do the challenge to get in, you can do the Synac Red Team track. It's free to do. It's a little bit more hard to do, but at the end of the day, if you complete it, then what that'll do is it'll bypass you past our wait list. So meaning that we have a wait list for all applicants so that we can make sure that people coming in are matched to upcoming opportunities or skills or things that we need to make sure that there's a good fit for the community. So if you can come in through the Synac Red Team track on Hack the Box, then you will bypass that wait list. If, for example, but after, what that means is that after you get past the wait list, you will go through one more technology assessment, which is our private assessment, to make sure that that you have a solid understanding of all the fundamentals. If you pass the Synac Red Team track, you should not have any problems doing this extra tech assessment. If you pass the tech assessment, you're well on your way to getting through the Synac Red Team process or onboarding process. If you don't want to do that, there's another way, which is Hack the Box has a pro labs called Dante. And what that is a more or less an OSCP prep course. So a lot of the people who take OSCP have found that taking Dante is a good prep. It's a good way to test your skills, make sure, validate whether you're good or not, or whether you're ready to take the test. And so what we've done is we said, hey, if anyone passes Dante, we'll also provide that same exposure, that same waitlist bypass. And so what we're giving away today are 5 VIP passes that get you onto Hack the Box, where you can you could take the Synac Red Team track, and you have a year to do that on for this certificate or for this this gift card, if you will. And then, or we have 1 month access to Dante. So for example, if you know that you already have an OSCP and you're ready to go, you should be able to go and do go through the Dante courses, knock that out, hopefully in the first month, at which point we're basically giving you an opportunity to bypass the wait list. So 12 months of VIP access on platform for all the winners. And then in addition, you'll have 1 month of Dante access. So if you're prepping for OSCP, already have your OSCP, and you're interested in trying red teaming out, this would be a great way to kind of shortlist yourself and kind of raise your hand and say, hey, I've got talent, Synac, give me a look.
So when you explain this to me, Ryan, the way that I interpreted this is almost a way that Synac is looking to bypass some of the traditional gatekeeping that happens with trying to join red teams or other types of things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, so again, our wait list is in place to make sure that our community is growing in the right strategic directions, to make sure that we have, we don't want to saturate specific regions. We want to make sure that there's alignment with the target listings and skills and things like that. So what we're doing with this, what we're providing as an opportunity is, like, if you can come in through one of these tracks, Synac Red Team track or passing the Dante labs, we're willing to basically say, look, we're going to bypass that waitlist, that synchronization function, and make it so that you can take the tech assessment. If you pass the tech assessment, you're pretty much on your way there.
Awesome. So listen, this is an amazing opportunity. Obviously, I want to thank Synac and Hack the Box both for this. This is amazing. Listen, if you put in for the raffle and you get this, you win this, this is your shot. And so I want to emphasize, I want everybody to have their shot at this. And so if there's any doubt in your mind that you're not going to be able to take this shot, please think about this community and make sure that you respectfully pass on this to somebody else who could benefit from this shot. I want everybody to win. I want everybody who has this opportunity to do this and to succeed. But this is a gatekeeping breakdown opportunity for 5 lucky winners out there. And so I want to make sure that you're absolutely 100% dedicated, committed, and serious to this adventure. And I think this is... Ryan, Synac, Hack the Box, thank you all so very, very much for this. We're going to, so what's going to happen is we're going to let this run for a few more minutes. I'm going to ask Carmen to start pushing questions on screen. We'll let this run for a little while longer so you can still get those raffle tickets in. Remember, you only have to hit it once. I promise you, Streamlabs does see it. We will get you entered in on this. When we do announce the 5 winners, listen, this is very important, and I'll make this announcement again. You do need to send Carmen Mod a private message that has your real name, your email address, and your Hack the Box username and your Twitter name, if you have a Twitter account, so that we can give those over to Ryan and the team. So do be prepared to give that stuff up. But we'll let that run a little bit, Ryan, and we will ask a couple questions. Hello Meow says... hello Master Neil and Captain Ryan. Look at that, Master and Captain again. I did this with David on Friday, and I was like, we don't want us to be Master and Commander of the boat. We'd get us lost.
I get seasick. So.
Yeah. See, that's what David said. David was like, yeah, I'd be down below throwing up, and I'm the only one up on the top of the deck.
I'd be nice. I would just go out. I would just do it off the side. I'd be like, tie a rope around me and just hang me off the side of the boat. I'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So. All right. So this question says, what if you're a complete beginner and have never been exposed to CTFs or bug bounty? Win one of these giveaways for Hack the Box 1 month and work every day to get into Synac. Is that a possibility? So that's question 1. How would Synac evaluate my performance on Hack the Box and decide if I'm good enough? That's kind of question 2. But what is good enough for Synac? So there's a couple questions there. How will all the winners be evaluated? All this stuff.
So what we look at is, did you complete either the Synac Red Team track or did you complete the Dante Pro Lab? So it's very binary. I'll tease apart the question. The first part, if you're brand new, you've never done a CTF, you've never done whatever, you're going to have a mountain to climb. So be prepared to focus in on that. Because like I said, you're going to have to learn what is it, not only about cybersecurity, you're also going to need to learn about what is a CTF, how do they work? A lot of times there's some nuances, and sometimes challenges can be a little bit more real world versus sometimes a little bit more what we call CTF-y. So it's kind of like you're going to have a lot of things to get read up on. So I would say that it's not impossible. Like I said, if you have talent, if you know that you have a talent or skill somewhere that you can lean on, you can make it. But you are going to take advantage of this opportunity past either the Synac Red Team track, which again, 12 in my mind, if you're kind of in and around the cybersecurity space, you've got some chops or something that you can lean on. Doing that in a year is possible, as well as Dante Pro Labs. Doing that in 1 month, you're going to need to make sure I have a little bit more focus and direction and probably experience. But so I never want to say never. Just make sure that you're going to have to put in a lot of effort and a lot of hustle to close that gap.
Okay.
Does that answer all of them?
I think that answers all of them. Yeah. Miss Root, okay. one of our awesome female cybersecurity folks that we have, she tunes into us. She religiously from South Africa. It is amazing to see her both in Discord and on stream. So I'm glad you're here. I read the press release about the Courageous Women in Security Initiative on your site. Have you seen more women apply to the elite Synac Red Team since the launch of this initiative?
We have, and this is one of the things one of the reasons I really like working with Synac. And I want to make one distinction. You said earlier that I was like the man, the person behind everything. Like I have an amazing team that works with me. So shout out to Tracy, Andre, Rajesh, Carson, Kelsey, and Jennifer as well. Like these people work with me to kind of make sure that we're putting the best foot forward. In terms of women, this is like one of those areas where like we are, Synac is actively looking to, close that cybersecurity talent gap. And again, part of that is trying to look into all the different places where talent has maybe been hidden and not necessarily, light hasn't shown into it. So we're partnering with organizations like SANS for veterans who have programs that also work with, women in cybersecurity and minority groups or, veterans and different areas. So again, our goal is to try to identify and find that talent and cultivate it up. I think one of the things that I'll throw this out there, and this is kind of odd, but when Chadwick Boseman passed away for Black Panther, I'm a big Marvel fan. I was very taken back by it for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I thought most was that here was this amazing actor that did so much for that community and was this figurehead that was like, oh my gosh, look at this person, this finally like a superhero to really see. And it was a major story and it was super successful. And to have that taken away was just, it just made it hurt me on the inside. My goal, or my Synac's goal, is to find those mentors, find those figureheads that are in these communities that are underrepresented and find a way to make them successful, give them a platform to inspire others. And so, so again, I'm super proud to work with my team on this, work with our partners. But since we've started that initiative, yes, our SRT women's group is growing. We're actively looking for the best and the brightest. And again, I would say that you'll see more of that coming this year, because that's definitely one of the demographics that we're trying to grow and create a really nice community of mentors and an opportunity and platform. If that makes sense.
That's awesome. That's very inspiring. Corvos says, where do you see the field going now that we have had a string of really high profile breaches and 0 days exposed? Do you think this will force companies to be more open in potential employees' education and years experience needed?
I hope so.
Don't we every single time this happens, that's what we say?
I remember so one of my interesting paths I'll talk about is I remember going to college, thinking I was going to be a computer science person. I was going for a computer science degree, and I got 2 years into it, and I was like, man, this is boring. I was not learning anything new. I found that it was like, really, it wasn't learning how to program was my thing. It was like, I liked using technology and I liked integrating it and making it interesting. So I dropped out of college. I took the cheater way out, where I dropped out and then told my parents, which was very interesting. But at the same point, but I remember thinking, like, I can do the work. Why do I want a degree? Why did I want to? Why is there so much emphasis? And I ended up eventually going back and getting a degree, business degree in MIS. But the thing that was really interesting is I remember the only reason I really did it was because there was this expectation that you have to have a degree to get a job. And, while yes, I could go get a job as a consultant, or I could keep doing what I used to do, I always found that I was having to horse trade the fact that I had no degree in the form of, I just have to be super flexible with my life. I have to travel all the time. I have to, I'm skilled, there's this leverage that's over me. And I really think that as we look to the future, especially in cybersecurity, there's so many ways in which a crowdsourced red team can benefit a company. There's so many ways in which a company can embrace the people that they already have to widen their security posture, improve it. That eventually there will be this simplification or this distillation of, hey, you know what? You don't need a master's degree in cybersecurity to add net positive benefit to your company. So I would hope that, what we're seeing is that there needs to be broader education about cybersecurity. Just the basics would probably get us really, really, really far. Mm-hmm. But I think that's first and foremost. But secondly, I would say there's got to be a reckoning, in my opinion, on what does it mean to need a degree, or finding these degree complements, or these degree alternatives. Because not that I want people to lose out on the concept of going to college, but the fact that some people, like I see, most recently, we were talking to these 14, 15, 16-year-old, I call them kids now because I'm over 40, but, but these kids are coming out of high school and they already have the skills that enterprise people need.
Yeah.
Why would you not tap into that pool of people and get them when they're passionate, get them when they're nimble? And, to me, like, that is the thing. And the companies that can figure that out and take advantage and embrace that community, that next generation of people coming out that are skilled, they're the ones who are going to be leading the charge. So I hope so. I really do. I'm tired of getting these LifeLock emails like, hey, here's another 12 years of protection.
I think
12 months.
I think it's when we see the organization change, or we see the community change, where there's not nearly this many breaches and we don't have this many 0 days coming out. I think that may be when we all look around and go, oh shoot, are we in danger of being out of a job now that we don't have all these things happening?
My money is that will probably never happen.
I know, right?
It'll be very, I think that'll be the least of our problems if that does happen. Let's put it that way.
I'm going to remind everybody before I ask you this question, Ryan, we do have a raffle going on for 5 VIP vouchers, 1-year VIP vouchers for Hack the Box. I see the exclamation point raffle slowing down. I'm just going to remind everybody one more time before we answer a couple more questions and close that off. Claw Overdraw says, do you see any emerging hardware tech that might change the way cybersecurity is done, like quantum CPU?
Wow.
I'm going to tack onto this. I've gotten at least 6 times in the last 45 days this question on, do I think AI is going to replace our jobs?
Well, my personal opinion is that I don't think AI is ever going to be able to replace our jobs. I think that there is, to me, and that's another thing what I like about Synac is that, we do use AI, but we use AI with the human. I think the thing that what's really interesting, and it kind of goes to the qualitative aspect of cybersecurity, is that the creativity that's needed to do this job well, in the sense that, it's really, really interesting. Some of the vulns that I've been privy to see, and I'm just like, how did the person think of that? Like, it's like I used a Swiss Army knife and launched a rocket. Like what did how did you get from A to B on that?
Right,
one?
right. How did you suddenly become the MacGyver of cybersecurity?
Exactly, so when I look at what is AI, machine learning, all that stuff like that, I don't see us getting that point in the next 10 years. But what I do see, and what I would want to see, is the mediocre stuff, the stuff that, what I wanted, the people who are highly skilled, like these $1 million hackers, whatever, like that. Let's provide a safety net for them. Let's make them and get them doing the really creative stuff. Let's find a way to reward the best of the best and get them doing the things that no one else on the planet can do. And then finding ways to get technology to make it so that more people can do the middle ground, the basic stuff, and make it so that it's, we have this nice, I don't want to use the word pyramid, but again, like there's this intentional distribution of the ability, the knowledge of how to do something and the ability to do it. And technology can be that enabler to where making it easier. And that's a really big thing. Now, in terms of hardware that's changing stuff, again, quantum computing, I was listening to, I guess, what was it? It was really interesting is the fact that, technically the encryptions most of the encryptions that we use today, right, are based on algorithms that just are really, really they're solvable, but just not in the time in which the data, in which the transmit, they can't be in real time or near time decrypted and whatnot because of the ability of computers. But if quantum computing becomes prevalent, then you really have to look at what is encryption, how, think about how long it took for HTTPS to become the de facto protocol of browsers. If quantum computing takes a massive leap and can come to market and become a commodity like in the next decade, then I think we'll have a very interesting encryption problem on our hands, meaning the ability for encryptions to be reliable and not be broken in stride. So that's probably the biggest one. Again, I hate to just jump on the thing you provided, but that is literally the only big hardware innovation that I look at. Yeah.
Let me. I want to pull on a small tangent to that, and only because I've had this conversation with other companies. You mentioned, freeing up these $1 million hackers or whoever it is to focus on some of these truly innovative things. We've seen a huge blow up of this breach, assessment simulation space, right? With Attack IQ and Safe Breach and Simulate and companies like that. When I talk to folks in my sphere, I oftentimes tell them I think that is probably the next evolution of trying to solve that problem that you're talking about, where if we can automate some of those very easy breach assessment, very low level hacking type of capabilities, then we can free up a lot of pen testers and red teamers and things like that to focus on the truly innovative aspects of what it is that they do. Is that too much of a conflict to ask you to weigh in on that?
I don't think so, but again, I don't see it like that.
Okay.
So for me, like I see it as being able to the technology. I never see it as technology replacing people. Like for example, like you don't ever see someone getting white hat sentinel. It's like, okay, I don't need a security team anymore.
Right.
Like it's like the technology makes it so that the people that do the work can do it better. And I think that what's interesting is the opportunity, in my opinion, is about the technology making it so that the people who are capable to take action on its findings or what it discovers it's about enabling that a new generation of people being able to say, hey, look, I don't have to have the full stack stuff, but making sure that we can have an entry level position, right? Creating more jobs and opportunities at the bottom level, if you will, of this stuff, and people who work with that software on a frequent, or that technology on a frequent basis. In terms of all the technology you were mentioning, being able to harness what they do and feed into the appropriate level, if you will. Like, is this something that's like with Synac, we have this concept called suspected vulns, where our technology will go and scan and look for things, and if it thinks it finds something, it'll tend to notify researchers and say, hey, we think we found something here at this port on this service, and could you go verify it? Let us know if it's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a good example of the technology making it easier for us to bring more people. Like, you don't need to have the full set, but it's like, hey, here's a payload that we think fired. Can you go verify and provide a qualitative element to it? That to me is going to be where the sweet spot of technology is going to be, because if we go at it from a point of technology is going to replace jobs or take people, whatever, one, the technology is not there. It's not going to be there anytime soon. And again, it's always going to be this creative aspect. Like you're going to have the human in the loop, if you want to call it, right? There needs to be someone there to make sure that, because I mean, if we don't, then we're Skynet and we're screwed. So,
Awesome. Well, I think on that note, let's actually close out the giveaway. This is your last chance to hit that exclamation point raffle. We're probably going to give you about 10 more seconds. If you haven't already got it to get your entries in. Listen, very important notes. We're going to announce 5 winners. These 5 winners need to message Carmen Mod. You see her chatting in chat right now. You need to message Carmen Mod with your real name, your email address, your Hack the Box username if you have one, and your Twitter handle if you have one. And listen, the other thing is listen, this is a truly gatekeeping, demolishing opportunity for 5 aspiring pen testers here on this stream. And as much as I want everybody to win this, we'll make sure that the 5 winners are truly committed to putting in the time and the effort to be awesome in this industry. Do the due diligence of this community. If you're not going to put this to use, we ask that you pass on this if you win, and pass it off to somebody else who is going to use this. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and close this. We're going to close this out. You ready for this, Ryan? Here we go. Let's get a little drum roll going on.
Ready.
First winner is ShadowNet2. Next winner, Tom007. Tom, I recognize you. Congratulations, sir. Glad to see you winning.
Nice.
The Sniper 3434. Ex Panda player. And then the last winner is iTwisty. Congratulations to those 5 winners. Go ahead and get your information over to Carmen Mod. Congratulations. Let's everybody give a bunch of cheers chats. Congratulations over to all of our winners. You guys won a 1-year VIP voucher to Hack the Box, as well as a 1-month Dante lab for your chance to bypass the Synac wait list. So again, I want to thank Synac. I want to thank Hack the Box so very much for providing those. Thanks to all of our winners. Let's go back over to questions really quick while Carmen verifies the winners. Net Fraser comes through and says, with the amount of time you have spent in the industry, what is one of your personal pet peeves that you see that you wish you would change industry wide?
Oh, this is different because there's all this tabs versus spaces would be one, that's for sure. But
there are people who have never programmed who have no idea what that joke is.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I think the biggest thing, the pet peeve for me, and again, I don't know if this is a pet peeve, but where I feel like the industry is at right now is that I feel like there's almost too many ways to get started, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a million different tracks, a million different opportunities. And again, it's a function of the complexity of cybersecurity, right? And I think that there's, and so I think that's probably one of the biggest one. But I think that having too many ways to get started and not having a clear career path, I think, for example, I would say that I'm starting to see a little bit more maturity about it right now,
mm-hmm.
in terms of the path to CISO, if you will. But I think that there is hey, what's a pragmatic way of transitioning? I think for me, it's so prevalent that's out there. It's so prevalent in terms of cybersecurity that there should be a better defined path of hey, here's how to get from IT. Here's how to get from a truck driver to pen testing, stuff like that. To me, that's one. But and again, I don't want to harp on it, but the whole the toxicity element, right? I don't enjoy reading it.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts to see it, and it's to me I mute those people as fast as I can, but at the same point having to I do my best to have that internal conflict of okay, is this something that's systemic, or is it for a specific person, or is this a flash in the pan?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a moment, right, where empathy needs to happen? But again, I want there to be something better, because for this. So I don't know if it's actually, I think I'm nerfed on that one because I just don't have, like I said, I'm very pragmatic person, like in terms of, I want things to just work and not have to like, you know, I just want things to work together. Like when I see things that, peanut butter and jelly, they should just go together. You shouldn't have to worry about, worry about all the different layers in between. It just works. So for me, like I have a bunch of pacadillos that I have in my back pocket.
No, that's fair, and I would agree with you on the path. I think that's a super frustrating one. That's one that I get asked a lot of, as well as the path, the right path to be on. Cyanide for dinner says that sounds like a terrible dinner. Cyanide. What's the difference between big H and small H hacker?
I think big H is when you have a resume or you have something to put on your resume, right? And at least if I had to pick a definition right now, is that it would. I think the big H would be a certification, a CVE, some sort of accolade that's provable, that demonstrates skill. To me, that's what constitutes a big H. A lowercase hacker or lowercase h, in my mind, is anyone that's a cybersecurity enthusiast that understands some basic aspects of security, actively promotes awareness of cybersecurity, and is constantly trying to improve themselves. So I think that's how I break it apart. Again, like I don't like putting. It's more of a figure of speech, big H, little h, but at the same point, like to me, like when you become a hacker, is that moment is when you have something that's an accolade that you can say, hey, I'm a hacker. I've got this to show that. And I think, and again, usually once you get that first, that second, third, fourth, fifth thing, they usually can tend to come pretty quick.
Rob Fedowitz says, can we hear about a wild memorable story from a client engagement while being with Synac?
I'm trying
in the most sanitized version possible.
So I honestly, so I have a story. I think the coolest part, well, there's a couple of things. I think the funniest thing would be, there's two things that come to mind. And again, one of them, I guess one of them was the Hack the Air Force at DEF CON a couple of years ago.
I remember this. I was there for that.
Hack the Air Force. Actually, it wasn't Hack the Air Force. I forget what it was, but we were working on.
It was Army or something.
It was definitely Air Force, but it was, we were working on a project. We had the researchers sequestered in a private room, and we were streaming the hacking event to the floor. And again, I honestly don't know what I can or cannot say about it, but I thought the thing I will say is that it was a hardware hacking. It was a hardware thing, a hardware device that was being worked on. And, we had a TAC team of researchers that were in the room, and it was really interesting. These guys were looking at this device and they were trying to find ways to get around it. And I thought was really interesting was like how they work together. We had a bunch of people who are really good with software, really good with OS, and going into low level elements. And in the end, it was a hardware engineer that figured out a thing that cracked the door wide open, and it was just insane. Once that door was open, it was just game over. Like it was, in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like this thing, like in 10 minutes, you could tell that the things were just going to start, happening. And then the things it was just impressive as all get out to see these researchers, again, coming from all walks of life, coming together and just decimating this device. That's very generic. I would say one of the funniest things would be, and again, this isn't client, we had our hacker hangout in Costa Rica, also, I guess in 2019. And it was just really funny because we had rented this really nice villa, had all these, rooms, a really elaborate big house, something like that. And everyone was going and having a good time. And then we had a pipe burst on the bottom floor of the thing, and it flooded the entire floor of the villa. And we were shuttling people in and out of the rooms, trying to get things going. We got it fixed, and then it burst again the second day. And I got down there. I actually was on my morning run, and I went outside and I saw water trickling down the steps outside. And I'm like, that's not good. And I went under the sink to try to fix it, and I got electrocuted because there was a water heater under there. And so again, so it was just that moment. I'll throw that out there as just memorable because it was when you see hackers like get together in a room, like there's some certain things that all come together. Like something is they're always looking for the power outlets.
Yeah.
You find that the hacker you want to be friends with is the one that always carries a power strip. I am one of those, just so you know. I always bring extra stuff. But then, also seeing things like, having like a massive room, really cool, like beautiful view, beautiful, great big, like suite of, party spread, alcohol, food, whatever, having a good party, and seeing like all the hackers in the room gravitate around a door that has a lock and trying to figure out if they can pick it. And that's the thing. That's the centerpiece of the party. The party can live and die, like do whatever you want, but that door needs to be open by the end of the party. To me, that's those are some memorable moments that I would say that come to mind. One of the reasons why I like working with these guys and girls and women and all people.
All right, Pommy 22. So Pommy, I love bragging about Pommy. Pommy's one of those guys, Ryan, that came to the stream religiously, followed the advice, went out and got a cybersec job with no certs, no experience, just through sheer hustle. He's one of those up and comers that I think is going to do really, really well in this industry because of that hustle. He says, cybersecurity is expensive. Do we have a chicken and an egg problem in the tech industry? Small companies don't have the money to secure their systems, and once they grow, they become bigger, easier targets. How do we secure new small companies from the start?
I think there is an aspect, I always call it a chicken omelet scenario, because it's, you don't know, it is very kind of like, you have to have things grow simultaneously. And this is where I think technology has to be that equalizer, in the sense that you've got to be able to have technology that can actually raise the bar for the small companies, that they can do more with less. Bring awareness to things, bring awareness to what their security posture is, where there are deficits, and give them actionable ways to close it. But I think you're right. Like if they're going to take advantage of the crowdsourced security model, right, they have to kind of buy in and pay to play, if you will. So part of that is setting the expectations up front. Like if you're going to start a company and you're in the technology space, you need to properly allocate for security as a forethought, not an afterthought. And that's part of the problem. I think that we need to find ways to, and this might tug on that thread a little bit about there's so many ways to get into cybersecurity. Like to me, like there needs to be a better blueprint for when technologies come online. For me, like in these modern days where you have, DevOps in the cloud, you've got, engineering in the cloud, QA in the cloud, there should be this recipe, that you can pick up, that's small business 101. That's like, hey, this is how you do, Git, secure development with Git, and, push it out the door, right? There should be, and again, I know that I say this because I know that there's a lot of opportunities out there and technologies that work. But again, like to me, I'd love to see that. To me is how you get a small company able to get in to become a medium company to where they can start investing in that bigger stuff, is to give them better tools to start out on and not start them out at a deficit. I don't know if I answered or kind of sidestep.
Well, I think it's not a sidestep. I think the problem that we have whenever I see small business questions, right, Ryan, is with all due respect to companies like Synac or others and things like that, they're focused on enterprises. They're focused on customers that can spend 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 15, $20 million to solve their cybersecurity problems. And not to over exaggerate the analogy, but the mom and pop pizza shops, who would really love to have their website pen tested, can't afford it or don't know about it or think it's too expensive and things like that. And so it's like, how do we get closer to bridging that gap so that we talk about inclusivity, from a work perspective. How do we talk about inclusivity in protecting everybody's assets?
No, and I think it's a valid point, right? Because I think at the end of the day, in an interconnected world, the weakest link is how it all ends, right? So I think from, the biggest aspect is going to be, it's in the crowdsourced area. Like you have to, I guess the biggest thing to balance is the researchers on the right have a bar to hit, like in terms of, and this is where growing that talent pool can help out. Because if you have the top researchers in the world doing testing on mom and pop pizza shop, right, you're never going to be able to afford it, because again, everyone in a the capitalistic society or whatever, the money is going to dictate where the researchers go, and that's where the small companies lose out. But I think that when you can find a platform that can match it based on skill and need and understand what's going on with the customer, then you have the opportunity to say, look, what we miss with someone that is really big and special, has super creativity, we can make up for with like a recreation in the aggregate. Like let's expose it to a more diverse set of people, different neurodiverse people that have different perspectives of how to solve problems, have different skill sets, and approach it that way. So I think it's largely in part a money problem. I don't think that it's because at the end of the day, researchers want to get paid. There's no researcher that's out there that's going to say, hey, I submitted this report. This researcher got paid 3,000. Why didn't this report? Why did I get paid 200? Right? No one's going to want to take that apple. It's a bitter pill to swallow. So for me, like, it mainly comes down to money. But I do think that there are ways, for example, like the checklist concepts, the missions, the compliance. There are ways to get started, to start, getting your security posture there. And again, when you're ready to start working your way into the crowd. Again, I think the crowd is the best way for companies to scale, small, medium, large, or otherwise, right? It's just finding ways to work with those platforms to get into those different, what size of the crowd, what parts of the crowd, what skills of the crowd do you want to go at? Because if you go at it from I want everything in the bag of chips, you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult to make sure that you get everything. So for me, it's finding that balance. And that's where building that trust, being clear about what your objectives are, making sure that researchers, customers, and the platform are all in sync on what is required or what is needed what does success look like, if you will. That's going to be how you find those incremental steps, in my opinion.
Awesome. So real quick, we've got we're going to re-roll for a couple of the Hack the Box vouchers. I noticed I'm gonna laugh about this. I'm gonna pick about our community. As soon as we got done rolling, 60 people dropped off the viewership, and we've got 2 people who have respectfully declined their win. And so I have mad respect for you guys for declining your win. Twisty, if you can hear my voice, message Carmen Mod now, or you will forfeit your win. So we're gonna re-roll for 2 more winners really quick. So the next winner is Magnologano XP. Magnolog and XP. Message Carmen Mod right now if you want your voucher, or Digital Byte. Make sure you message Carmen Mod. You two who just won, make sure you re-message Carmen Mod. Twisty, you have like 5 seconds to message Carmen Mod, or we're going to give your voucher away as well to somebody else who wants it. Ryan, with that being said, don't anybody go anywhere, because obviously we're still waiting for these people to verify their win. But Ryan, we're coming up at the top of the hour, and I want to be super respectful of your time. I can talk to my audience after I let you go. But listen, on behalf of my audience, on behalf of my team, on behalf of my moderators, thank you so very much for giving us your time. Thank you to Synac and to Hack the Box for your partnership and for giving us some awards. Listen, the floor is yours. Say whatever it is you want to say to the community. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Neil. Again, this has been super fun. I find it a privilege, or I guess in general, very fun to be able to talk with people that get it, right? They get the technology, that are promoting the conversations that need to be had. So again, whether it's even with your community, whatever, I think the one thing I will say to everybody is that at any point in time, there's always something that you may or may not be an expert on. And that's okay. You don't have to be the world's biggest hacker with the big H, whatever like that. You just, in my opinion, passion and hustle are what make the difference. So find that thing you're good at, own it, become a zealot for it, and then use that and make a plan. Don't feel like you have to consume the entire cybersecurity space all at once. You're going to find much more success if you come up with a plan. At the end of the day, that's going to help you, whether or not you want to transition to red team, whether you want to stay in blue team, want to do compliance or auditing or any of that stuff. Like, find the plan and execute it, and that's going to be your best rhythm or their best chance for success. In terms of reaching out, I would urge you. I know that Neil's giving you guys like 1,000 LinkedIn challenge, whatever like that. I'm more than welcome to, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm more than welcome to answer questions. If you have any about joining the red team or anything with Synac, I'm more than happy to do that. My only ask is that, if you're asking me for help, just help me understand where you're coming from. Like, what work have you done? Where are your obstacles? I'm more than welcome to give you my perspective or introduce you to someone if I know that I can solve your problem. But just all I'd say is embrace the community and the culture of where we are right now. Take an opportunity to help those that you can, learn from those who have been are gracious enough to share their thoughts. Read the CVEs, read the blog post, like and subscribe and support anyone that is helping it advance the conversations around cybersecurity. There's so much work to be done in this world right now, in this area. We need every soul, every person, no matter what religion, what gender, whatever, right? Like, we need everything. And so just be a part of the thing that helps build us up. And I think that will speak volumes and kind of demonstrate what the hacker community can do as a whole. So with that, I'll just kind of say this has been fun. I love talking nerd. So happy to do it again anytime soon.
Awesome. So for up-to-the-minute cybersecurity news, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Cyber and Security channel on Twitch and YouTube. Also, make sure you turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live.